He's an evolutionary biologist turned celebrity atheist. He's sold millions of books since he published The Selfish Gene in 1976, and his last big hit was The God Delusion, which came out in 2004. But after all that best-selling success, do people buy into his brand of anti-religious belief? Do they agree with him that religion amounts to a pernicious virus? To find out, I've come to St Paul's Cathedral to survey a random flock.
Well, I can see where he's coming from, but however, I think that religion, although it does have some bits that I think it could lose, it gives people a purpose to keep going.
And I think now, if we look at what's happening particularly in the Middle East now, a lot of it is religion bound, and I'm afraid I was brought up as a Catholic, but I'm afraid I've got very little time for that as well now.
You're thoroughly lapsed.
I have pretty thoroughly lapsed, yes.
Do you believe in God?
Yeah.
Enough to go to one of these places every once in a while?
Well, every once in a while, but I wouldn't say I was a Christian.
What would you say you were?
Festive at Christmas.
Okay. He still wouldn't like you.
Fanatical religion is a virus, potentially, but religion in itself has a lot of good things about it.
Such as?
Believing there's a greater purpose, life after death, those kind of things that make us feel warm and fuzzy inside. But
what if it's a load of rubbish?
No one can prove that.
Do you have faith yourself? Is there someone upstairs?
Yes.
Richard Dawkins, you've talked a lot in terms of religion being a pernicious virus. When you talk in those sort of emotional, quite visceral terms, are you doing that to sort of raise hackles and therefore heighten the debate, do you think?
I don't think I've talked a lot about it being pernicious. I'm not even sure I ever used the word pernicious.
But virus is a word you've
certainly
definitely
virus. And the point there is really not the pernicious aspect, although I actually think it is pernicious. The point there is that it's infectious. It's something that grips the mind in the same way as a conventional virus, grips the body, in that it takes control, and it does so the better to propagate itself.
But in choosing words like that, or on occasion I've read that you've said you despise organised religion, or religious belief actually, they're very emotive terms for someone from an academic background. Are you doing that because you feel it's in the interests of the cause that you're pursuing, that debate is quite highly charged?
I wonder if they're as emotive as you think they are. I suspect that because we've all been brought up with this sort of culture of respecting religion, that anything comparatively mild sounds more outspoken than it really is. I mean, do
you really despise religious belief?
I despise people who believe something without evidence and then go out and take action which damages other people. Yes. So I despise people whose belief in religion is so firm and so unshakable that they actually think it justifies killing people. And there are, of course, many people like that.
But your average devout worshipper who's sitting in a pew of a Sunday morning, you don't despise them.
No, of course I don't, no.
What are your feelings towards them?
Well, I mean, they're harmless, especially Church of England. I mean, they're harmless. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. No, of course I don't despise them.
Here's the thing. I am an agnostic. I have thought about the tenets, certainly, of Christian belief. And as far as believing in God is concerned, sort of found them wanting, or myself unable to be convinced. But I still think that I can't possibly know whether God exists or not anymore. I mean, am I being sort of, what's the word? Weak-willed, guilty of not having the courage of my convictions?
No, I mean, I'm an agnostic too in that sense. In The God Delusion, I made a 7-point scale. 1 was total conviction that there is a God, and 7 is total conviction that there isn't. And I put myself as a 6. Okay, so that's kind of agnostic, but veering towards atheist. And I would be a 6 with respect to fairies and pixies and werewolves and things like that. But there are people who will say, because they're agnostic, that puts them absolutely right in the middle. The probability of there being a God and there not being a God is exactly 50-50. And that, I think, is the wrong sort of agnostic to be, because I think you can sort of put a probability figure on it. You can say, well, I think a God is very unlikely, but I can't actually disprove it. So I'm not a 7. I'm a 6.5 or something like that. And that's where I would put myself.
What about the fact that religion, in terms of its institutional influence, persists? How much does that irritate you? Or
it's weird
exercise you?
that those countries that have sort of the trappings of theocracy remaining, like Britain, because we have bishops in the House of Lords, and we have lots and lots of faith schools, and we have the Queen is the head of the Church of England. It's an odd thing that those countries, like Britain, like the Scandinavian countries, which have an established church, seem to be the least religious. And a country like America, which has written into its constitution the separation between church and state, a wall of separation, as Jefferson called it, is one of the most religious countries, the most religious country in the Western world. So there's an odd negative correlation with what you might naively expect.
How do you explain that, do you think?
Well, various explanations have been offered. I mean, one explanation is that in a country like Britain, where religion is part of the establishment, it's become sort of boring. Whereas in America, where there's the wall of separation, religion has become free enterprise. And so you have mega churches with their own television stations, their own creches to look after the children, their own gyms. They've become huge commercial enterprises, tax-free, by the way, which helps, with the televangelists having private Lear jets to jet around in and fleets of posh cars and things.
It's not tea and biscuits.
It's a very, very big business, religion in America, whereas in Britain it's become sort of boring and people don't really take it very seriously one way or the other.
Politics is very reluctant to go anywhere near this. I mean, in terms of the solutions to some of what you're talking about, the only place we can look is to politics. The state has to act. Perhaps things have to be legislated for. And yet, I mean, there was a hell of a fuss when Ed Miliband recently said he was an atheist. There's a sort of, it goes back to what you said before, I think, about not offending religious sensibilities.
Yes.
There's a sort of twitchiness about religion.
I think that's
still.
True. Yeah, I think that is
And then
true.
I suppose my question, given the amount of energy you expend on this issue, how are you aiming to get over that? Because it does stand in the way
Yes.
of society achieving the sort of shape that someone like you would like it to achieve.
Yes, and my colleague Dan Dennett coined the phrase belief in belief. Lots and lots of people are not religious themselves, but they've got a vague idea it's a good thing that other people are. It's very patronising and condescending, by the way. It's sort of the attitude, well, you and I, of course, are too intelligent to be religious, but the common people need it. And there are a lot of people who actually think that. A lot of people think that we need religion in order to be moral. There are a lot of people who think that if you took religion away, people would start, rushing around, smashing shop windows and robbing and raping and things like that. No evidence for that whatever. I mean, absolutely none. So I think one important thing we've got to do is to prize apart religion from morality. It's absolute nonsense to say that you need religion in order to be moral. And so I think that would be one major step we could take. You don't need to send your child to a faith school in order to instill in that child a sense of morality, a sense of good citizenship.
For whatever reason, even in a secular country like this, we have arrived at a point where there's a sort of latent belief within the popular consciousness that to be scientific is to somehow be sort of desiccated and dry and to miss out on the magic and mystery of one's experiences and the world and so on. You dispute that, right? So
not only dispute it, I mean, it's just the exact opposite of the truth. Science is wonderful. Science is amazing. The fact that you could understand why you exist, who could not be turned on, who could not be excited by that? Who would ever want to live in a world where you live your life, you go to work, you go to the office, whatever it is, you go to the football match, and this goes on year after year, and then you die. And you don't have any understanding of why you were there in the first place. That's desiccated, that's dry. What is not dry and desiccated is coming into the world, as it were, awakening in the world, and awakening in the fullest sense of seeing the universe, seeing the stars, seeing down a microscope, seeing what's inside every single cell, seeing what's inside the brain, and marvelling at this wonderful gift of life that we have, albeit temporarily, marvelling at this gift of understanding why we exist and rejoicing in it for as long as we do exist.
Richard Dawkins, thank you very much.
Thank you.